On Saturday, May 10th of 2003, I worked for Norfolk Southern in that building right behind that Dayglow green door. It took more than 2 years from that day for the door and the interior walls of the building to be painted Dayglow green by Norfolk Southern. On that same day in May, David R. Good, the CEO and chairman of the board for Norfolk Southern Corporation, gave a commencement speech to graduates of Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. Here's some of what Mr. Good had to say on that day. I bring you both a report on reality and a message somewhat different. Don't assume that life in the real world, whatever part of it you're looking at, is as corrupt or as venal or as greedy as the television images of executives and the newspaper headlines about corporate scandals would have you believe. You should not hesitate to get involved. In the contrary, I'd say, jump on in. The water's fine. The people with honesty and integrity are the ones destined to lead the way. The organizations, be they business, educational institutions, charitable organizations, you name it. The organizations dedicated to operating on responsible principles of ethics and accountability and governance are the ones that last. They have the strength to succeed in times of uncertainty. You can hang your hat on them, seek them out, and add your strength to theirs. The overriding responsibility today is for our professional and personal lives to maintain a strong sense of ethics. That's no different than it's ever been. Our challenge is not to be misled by hype and glitz so that we forget the basics, as too many people did during the past 2 or 3 years. The lesson of our time is, for heaven's sake, please do it the right way, ethically, honestly. The events of the last few years show we need that moral commitment from today's graduates for our system to work. Do the things government should not have to do. Most important, a company such as ours has people who are dedicated to maintaining the highest standards of ethics and accountability. We have a history of integrity, and we are committed to maintaining a clean record. I'm proud of our financial and corporate accomplishments, but I am far prouder that we have a tradition and a reputation for fair dealing, for trying hard to do the right things. My wish for you is that wherever you land, when you jump in the pool and swim, it will be in an organization like that, and that you will do your part to make it better. Or that you will yourself develop a culture based on honesty and high standards. In doing so, always ask yourself, is that enough? You achieved a lot up to this point. Keep doing the right thing. Your community, your nation, the world will be better for your efforts. And so will you. On March 22nd, 2007, David R. Good is scheduled to give another speech at Old Dominion University as part of the Lessons in Ethical Leadership series. Let's take a trip in time, and let's jump on in. Let's test the waters for a lesson in ethics, accountability, honesty, and integrity in the face of fraud, venality, corruption, and greed. See what happened to one brave man of integrity who worked for Norfolk Southern and Mr. Good right behind that Dayglow green door. During the summer of 2003, the 120-year-old building known as BO Tower, located in Kalamazoo, Michigan, was infested with lice. When Norfolk Southern hired an exterminator, the exterminator indicated the lice were bird lice from birds and animals living within the walls of the building. Being bitten by lice on dozens of days over several months was extremely disturbing. On September 23rd of 2003, the birds had gone south, but the lice, they had stuck around. This complaint of alleged safety and health hazards was mailed on September 23rd of 2003 to the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or MIOSHA. The complaint listed lice, filth, airborne irritants, numerous barewood surfaces, a leaking roof, a leaking pipe, skin itching, and mice. There was also a large notation, "Please inspect this building." In October of 2003, I began to have unusual chest pains, severe fatigue, and a persistent dry cough. In early November, I had planned to ride in a 27-mile mountain bike race called the Iceman in Traverse City, Michigan. I distinctly remember thinking that if riding in that mountain bike race was going to kill me, at least I'd die doing what I loved. Telling anyone about the chest pains or other health problems was not possible until after finishing that mountain bike race. Over that winter, several doctors examined me and attempted to uncover the cause of my persistent chest pain and other health problems. My heart was normal, digestive problems were non-existent, and still the symptoms persisted. Although my workplace was clearly an unsafe and unhealthy environment, my symptoms were much more severe than what I felt could be caused by those conditions. In February of 2004, two coworkers approached me and reported having the same set of health problems. It didn't take long for all of the employees and recent employees to confirm the same set of health. 4 months had passed, and the complaint that I had sent to the Michigan Occupational Health and Safety Administration, or MIOSHA, had not been responded to in any way. I was told by a Norfolk Southern employee that inspectors from the state of Michigan had recently inspected a different Norfolk Southern building in Kalamazoo. On February 16th of 2004, I mailed a letter to MIOSHA with a copy of the first complaint, digital photographs of the building, a list of the employees, and a road map to the building. The letter explained that the building is occupied by one employee 24 hours a day and 365 days a year, that those employees were experiencing health problems that were most likely due to the condition of the building, that the building had not been cleaned, had received no routine maintenance, and no safety inspections for several. I began to videotape the O Tower on the night shift from 11 p.m. on February 16th to 7 a.m. on the 17th. It was necessary to document the health and safety hazards, and most importantly, to try to discover the source or sources causing illness to me and my coworkers. The uncomfortable, undesirable, and hazardous conditions of BO Tower were certainly never a secret. Most of the other employees and I had made numerous complaints to the local safety committee and to our immediate supervisor. At least a dozen Norfolk Southern officials had been in the building during times that I was working, and certainly many more had at other times. A prior Norfolk Southern supervisor had been extremely upset at the conditions of the building, but had been unable to do anything to help the employees of the building. I had been told dozens of times in the 7 years that I worked there that complaints about the conditions of the building would result in the building being closed and/or being fired. Because I had no experience with workplace hazards or pathogens, my initial focus was on the vast quantities of peeling lead-based paint, dust, filth, mold, moisture, and mice in the building. The original videotape was more than 90 minutes long.
Actually, some of this almost looks like paint chips, given the bigger size of the dust, believe it or not. You can see the dust and dirt all over it. Obviously, how dirty is back behind it. A broken window, which is broken only on the outside pane. It's been broken for at least 4 years. I'm thinking 4 or 5 years that's been broken. It was broken, I think some kids threw a rock at it or something. I'll show you this ledge here. It's terrible. goes down probably 10 feet or so. You can see how bad the paint is on that ledge. Horrible. We have, these are timers for signal maintenance, and you can see how you'd expect them to be dirty, but
This mop was provided by me and taken out of the building in March of 2004. Norfolk Southern has not provided another mop to the employees of BO Tower since then.
pretty much nasty peeling paint and rust. Then there's a hole up here that I patched and put the end of a plastic cup in and then put foam in it to keep. We go over to these pipes, which are pretty gross, along the wall there with all the peeling paint. There's another one of these. I think these were from a steam heat system or something like that. It's peeling real bad, and if you can see, oh, that's dirt, but there's paint chips there too. Obviously, that's a paint chip. Let's see here. There's ant roach spray from when the lice were biting me and other people, and some off. It is. Paint's peeling on this sledge. This window doesn't get used. Around the window. See if I can touch this. We'll see how dirty it is. You can see this window here.
The first floor of BO Tower contained the toilet facilities, filth, large amounts of peeling lead-based paint, a dead mouse, mold, and moisture intrusion. The ceiling of the first floor is open to the workplace on the second floor.
Probably pretty gross. And peeling paint behind it. One toilet. Well, this would be the northeast corner, which has an awful lot of peeling paint. Terrible. Facing south. This is the southeast corner. Obviously, fluid repairable something. Let's see that.
On February 21st, I videotaped the sink area.
Paint. Just nasty. There's the sink. I mean, this is just peeling like mad. My fingers in there, which is probably the last thing I ought to be doing. Just peeling paint everywhere.
On February 23rd, I videotaped the windows covered with painted and unpainted plywood. There was also areas where birds had nested in the walls in the past. The small hole was sealed by me by using a plastic cup and aerosol insulation, removing the baby birds and nest from the wall where it was not possible.
Whatever is there. Alright, now I'm facing north. And see all the windows that are boarded up. Just bare plywood. No idea why they're boarded up like that. If there's still glass in there, or underneath the stairs here where these tiles were, the asbestos or whatever. Looks like that's
More videotape was done on February 23rd.
the looking at, if I want you to look close and see if you notice, this is bought by employees, but it is empty. This is a bar of soap. And you take a good look at this windowsill here that I took pictures of the other day, and how dirty it is now. Look, just filth, and looks like paint chips to me. Just where the stuff comes from, I have no idea. This has been, I cleaned this windowsill about 2 weeks ago, and it was probably 10 times dirtier than it is right now. Just absolute filth, particles of stuff that comes from where? Just filth. And I hope it's not lead that I've got on my finger, but who knows? And filth, just absolute filth. Take a good look at this. Dirt. Plain dirt. No one puts their feet up there. No one does anything. This is just dust. Dirt and dust. Huge particles of something. Videos. This is inside. The windows are open today. This is the inside of the windowsill here. And this so I'm going to push it right back where it came from. Warm for February, and there's the hole in the screen that's been there since 1999 or so. Yeah, 1999. Everybody that's come up here, train masters, various train masters, superintendents, assistant superintendents have had to walk through this door right here and look at that hole in the screen. Basically, oops, wrong way, is at my eye level, a little above my eye level. So it's still eye level for most people. And here we have our exterminator put wire mesh up to keep birds out. I don't remember whether I recorded this the other day, because we had birds building nests in the walls right here and here. We got bit up by, and there's more siding that's falling apart, which potentially could be what do you call it, asbestos. There's more where they put wire mesh up and foam to keep wasps and birds from building. This corner here where the siding's off, and of course that's not going to keep mice out in a million years, where birds have been building nests in the walls, which is terrible. And up in there too, underneath there, they're building nests under. You can see the wire mesh there. All under there, they were building nests. Rodents, nothing. There's basically holes, which just makes for easy entry. And the same thing right there with this pipe, a hole. Oh well, it's going to come out. Oh, there it is. At least 5 years. We're in the ballpark. You can see, I don't remember what's on the inside there, but that's how well everything's constructed. You can see where water's been going in there too. Who knows what's on the other side of that? Probably insulation and another piece of, just like that board I just pulled off. I don't know if I want to go pulling on these. But I would bet there's nothing in there. So moisture goes right down there. I can actually put my hand in there. Right down into the wall. My little buddy mouse is still dead there. Yeah, he's not a possum, he's a mouse. So the back side of these windows that we were just looking at on the wall that faces now, including what is mold. From where I was just at, you can see that right there is, oh, right over there is the desk. This is basically where we're at. Down there, the edge. And the amazing thing is, oh, it's not amazing. This little partition there for the bathroom, you can see obviously it gets wet somehow. And just to be the window that's furthest east. I'm facing south right now. And obviously, that right there is from mold, and Lord knows what it is. From mold, from water. Freudian slip there. I think it's mold. Back in this corner, just tons of peeling paint stuff. I'm not sure whether that's insulation or dirt. I'm a little colorblind, so I can't tell you what color it is. Gray. Oh, something's moving. Probably just me. Oh. How dirty it was in this lever bed. I have cleaned this before. The problem is it was with an old vacuum cleaner. Well, even with this new one I wouldn't clean it because it's I've gotten sick from it before, a couple times, and there's just a lot of crap down in there. Just a lot of dirt, which there shouldn't be even this much dirt in the place, but dirt, cobwebs. It's absolute gross stuff.
The dust in this area was confirmed by other employees to contain pieces of vermiculite attic insulation. A few weeks later, David Blaine from Myosha picked up pieces of vermiculite insulation from the floor in this area.
That's about it for the levers. Okay, this is a must-see because this is the vacuum cleaner we had for the time I started in 90. What year was 90? Almost 7 years ago, so it'd be 97. Till last summer, and what this would actually, it worked just the way it was supposed to, but it would shoot little dust out with it when you vacuumed, which was pretty nice. And obviously no one should be vacuuming lead paint with it, or with the vacuum we have upstairs. Neither one of them are meant to be used for vacuuming the kind of stuff that's here, especially the lead. I bought bags for it myself, which were only a couple dollars, because of course I don't think anybody ever bought bags for it. Probably they were emptied out or something, because I did buy new bags for it and attempted to clean and pretty much got sick. What would happen is if you cleaned with a vacuum cleaner, you'd get respiratory symptoms pretty fast. You get burning in your nose and throat, and it's pretty.
Mold, peeling paint, and more were videotaped in the workplace.
So here, more moisture in the corners. Hard to tell what it looked like. There was moisture, mold along this wall, and kind of looks like that. This dark stuff here, it's definitely moisture. It's moist to the touch. That sure as hell looks like mold to me. I don't know. It's awful. Definitely moisture where water's gotten in and soaked there. More moisture, or mold, or whatever, and more moisture in the walls, which is a bad thing. And down in there, same thing. And of course, we got more moisture right here, along the edge of that wall.
I had not planned to enter the attic of BO Tower. However, another employee told me that large pieces of insulation resembling cat litter had fallen through the cracks in the ceiling on several occasions. Investigation on the internet revealed that the insulation was vermiculite and could contain tremolite asbestos. I filmed the attic standing on a ladder and did not get off of the ladder.
That's about it. Oh my god. Little particle. Raining right now. I think I just heard a little thunder. Supposed to have thunderstorms tonight and tomorrow morning. And that's about it there. And then we'll go to the ceiling and where the cracks are. Hopefully this stuff from the there's asbestos in the vermiculite. It can't come through, but I have seen vermiculite on the somewhere. I'm not quite sure. It looks like it could sure come through right there. It's a little scary because the particles are huge compared to the dust, which is the asbestos. If you notice, there's some pretty good cracks here. And with all the trains going by and vibration and so on, the trains and the fact that the wind blows and even shakes the whole building, especially the trains. There's a lot of vibration when the passenger trains and the Amtrak's go by because the building's obviously right next to the railroad tracks. So I'm just going to try to get as much of these cracks as I can just to show that pretty much the whole ceiling has these cracks from one end to the other. One end to the other, there's cracks, and hopefully that stuff's not making its way down here. There's where I got in to film the what's in the attic. that should all be sealed real well to keep. There should be no cracks up there, that's for hell sure. I'm not real comfortable with seeing those cracks up there. Of course, it's just, you know, who knows whether there's anything between the boards or not, but let me go back to here. There's a spot. Right, that may be where the stuff came through. There's actually a hole right there. It's got something blocking it. You can see there's some rot in the board, which is probably from water, it looks like. And actually, hole where cable goes through, which is bad because obviously that stuff can come right through there. And then let me see if I can find it. It looks like about it for cables coming through that I can see. That one right there. But the particles are so small that they can make, theoretically can make it through these cracks. You can see that crack right there. It looks like there's been some water damage right there. And that's going to be about do it for the cracks. Hopefully that's going to about do it for the filming, but you never know. I've said that about a dozen times that I've filmed in.
Information on vermiculite insulation is easily available on the internet. In published information from the EPA and the ATSDR strongly recommend that vermiculite insulation be left undisturbed in your attic. Due to the uncertainties with existing testing techniques, it is best to assume that the material may contain asbestos, and it is possible that vermiculite attic insulation can sift through cracks in the ceiling, around light fixtures, or around ceiling fans. You can prevent this by sealing the cracks and holes the insulation could pass through. A MIOSHA document from the summer of 2003 titled Vermiculite Health Hazards states, the Michigan Asbestos Program is cautioning consumers to presume that their vermiculite product contains asbestos and to take appropriate precautions to prevent and or avoid unnecessary disturbance activities. And our goal in any asbestos matter is to minimize exposure. An EPA document from 2001 states, it is important to recognize that occupational exposure standards for asbestos are not generally applicable or protective for residents or workers in non-asbestos environments, because occupational standards are intended to protect individuals who, A, are fully aware of the hazards of the occupational environment, B, have specific training and access to protective equipment such as respirators and or protective clothing, and C, actively participate in medical monitoring. None of these conditions apply to residents or to workers at typical commercial establishments. Thus, simple compliance with the OSHA standards is not evidence that exposure levels are acceptable in a home or in a non-asbestos workplace. Indeed, risks to residents or workers occur at exposure levels substantially below the OSHA. Another EPA document states, it is known that asbestos fibers accumulate in indoor environments, and re-entrainment of indoor fibers can multiply indoor ambient levels 50-fold. This is a bag of vermiculite taken from Norfolk Southern's BO tower. It is obvious that the smallest particles have sifted downwards to the bottom of the bag. These boards are from Norfolk Southern's BO tower and provide an excellent example of how easily the vermiculite insulation can pass through cracks in the ceiling. On March 3rd of 2004, I received a telephone call from MIOSHA inspector, Mr. David K. Blaine. Mr. Blaine explained that Norfolk Southern was to be allowed to do its own safety and health inspection and to report the findings to MIOSHA. This letter was sent to Mr. Blaine by express mail on March 3rd of 2004. Dear Mr. Blaine, enclosed is a copy of a complaint dated September 23rd of 2003, a copy of a complaint dated February 16th, 2004, and a videotape of workplace. Since the complaint on February 16th, all 4 other coworkers have complained of unusual fatigue and other health problems. All 4 coworkers and I believe that the workplace exposure is causing health problems. The enclosed videotape details many potential health hazards and neglect of maintenance of the building involved by our employer, Norfolk Southern. During the final minutes of the videotape, notice that the attic is filled with vermiculite insulation, which probably contains asbestos. Please add the videotape to the information already submitted to MIOSHA. Your response to this situation would be greatly appreciated. I firmly believe that the workplace should be inspected by MIOSHA as soon as possible. I worked from 11 a.m. on March 4th to 7 a.m. on Friday, March 5th. The employee starting at 7 a.m. told me that Norfolk Southern was aware of my videotaping and had a copy of the videotape. He also told me that I should quit before being fired. That day, I took a sample of the vermiculite insulation from BO Tower to Dayglow and Associates in Kalamazoo. A laboratory analysis done by EPA protocol indicated 5% tremolite asbestos present in the vermiculite insulation. I only worked 2 more days for Norfolk Southern and sent this letter on March 9th of 2004. As an employee at Norfolk Southern at BO Tower in Kalamazoo, I regret to inform you that the attic at BO Tower contains vermiculite insulation. This type of vermiculite insulation has a much higher than 80% probability of containing a type of asbestos called tremolite. Scientific information regarding contact with this type of insulation and asbestos is widely available. Specific information is available by contacting the Environmental Protection Agency and MIOSHA. My discovery of this insulation in the attic was in the past 5 days. Other employees and I have noticed particles of vermiculite in the workplace. These particles of vermiculite were able to pass between the numerous cracks in the ceiling at BO Tower and fall into the workplace. By looking into the attic, vermiculite insulation seems to cover the surface of the entire attic. The particles of tremolite asbestos are extremely small and can easily pass through the cracks and into the workplace. This is particularly a problem because of the proximity of BO Tower to 4 sets of railroad tracks and the movement of the building in the wind. Exposure to tremolite asbestos occurs through respiration. It is important that action is taken to protect the health of my coworkers and myself. The workplace environment at BO Tower is extremely problematic, but the potential presence of asbestos is an extreme concern. Limiting additional exposure to my coworkers and me is extremely important. I also believe that it is important that all coworkers are notified of the potential exposure to asbestos. Because of health problems, I will be sick for at least until March 19th. I have a doctor's appointment on Thursday, March 11th, and will get a doctor's note for this period of time. The doctor's note will be forwarded to you as soon as possible. Please understand that I only have a layman's knowledge of vermiculite insulation and tremolite asbestos. There is no additional information regarding this situation which I possess that will help Norfolk Southern in dealing with this potential problem. Please direct any questions regarding this situation to appropriate experts and governmental agencies. In my final 2 days at BO Tower, to test whether vermiculite was passing through cracks in the ceiling, I banged upwards on the ceiling for several minutes with a broom. When I looked down at the floor, there was more vermiculite on the floor than what I expected or thought possible. You might wonder why I didn't videotape this activity. There were 2 very good reasons. First, I was further contaminating the workplace with tremolite asbestos by banging on the ceiling. Second, I was frightened of drastic and bizarre action by Norfolk Southern if I brought the video camera to work again. No person has ever admitted to banging on the ceiling to see how easily vermiculite insulation patch. In March of 2004, I had a disturbing confidential conversation with a MIOSHA whistleblower. The whistleblower indicated that the MIOSHA inspection process had been absolutely corrupted, and that it was not possible to obtain any hope of remedying the situation without contacting Mr. Douglas J. Kalinowski, the director of MIOSHA. There was not adequate evidence to do so at that time, but eventually contact was made with Mr. Kalinowski and with Governor Jennifer Granholm. On March 10th of 2004, in response to my letter, David Arnovitz, my supervisor at Norfolk Southern, requested my medical records to, and I'm quoting, determine your current fitness for service. The next day, on March 11, 2004, Mr. Arnovitz sent another certified letter to me indicating that I had broken numerous Norfolk Southern rules and regulations by videotaping BO Tower. I was ordered to attend my first of 3 disciplinary investigations to be held at the Radisson Hotel in Kalamazoo, Michigan. On March 11, 2004, Mr. Arnovitz was also present for the first of 3 MIOSHA inspections of BO Tower. The MIOSHA inspector for the first inspection was David Blaine. A private contractor was allowed to also do an inspection at the same time. A Norfolk Southern employee, Alan Johnson, was assigned as the union representative. On March 16, 2004, I sent a letter to notify MIOSHA of the disciplinary investigation by Norfolk Southern. The letter repeated the many health and safety hazards at the workplace and listed the employees and recent employees. The response to this letter from MIOSHA would prove to be extremely important. In the letter, I also explained that I had seen my physician, Dr. R. Michael Kelly, the day before, that Dr. Kelly had requested the formal name and address of my workplace. I also repeated my concerns about the insulation entering the workplace through the ceiling, that the inspection process be truly independent, and that Norfolk Southern had significant... On March 31st of 2004, I received a telephone call from Fred Kirkland, who works with the MIOSHA asbestos program. Mr. Kirkland indicated that my physician, Dr. R. Michael Kelly, had contacted him with concerns about my former workplace. Mr. Kirkland requested a copy of the lab report from Delisle and the videotape of BO Tower. On April 5th of 2004, at the crack of 9 a.m., I was awoken by a telephone call from David Blaine of MIOSHA. Mr. Blaine was very agitated and upset about an investigation of his inspection. It took a minute for Mr. Blaine to explain who he was and that he had inspected BO Tower from MIOSHA. I tried to explain that the investigation was Norfolk Southern's disciplinary investigation and not a state of Michigan investigation into the inspection of BO Tower. Mr. Blaine then stated that he did not take the bulk sample of vermiculite insulation from the attic at BO Tower and had allowed the contractor employed by Norfolk Southern to collect the sample. This statement would be crucial to everything that would occur after that day. On April 7th of 2004, I sent this letter to Fred Kirkland of MIOSHA and my physician, Dr. R. Michael Kelly. Dear Mr. Kirkland, I am writing to you in regard to the telephone conversation with you on March 31st. In that conversation, I indicated the facility owned by Norfolk Southern and known as BO Tower contains vermiculite insulation in the attic. This vermiculite is easily passing through numerous cracks in the ceiling of the building. As indicated by the sample that I had tested by Delisle of Kalamazoo, copy included, this vermiculite contains tremolite asbestos. A copy of a videotape is included that clearly shows the problem with the vermiculite and the cracks in the ceiling. This videotape is forwarded to the portion of the video containing about 9 minutes of the attic and ceiling. Banging on the ceiling with the bristled end of a broom causes vermiculite to fall from the ceiling. The building is directly adjacent to railroad tracks and is subject to significant vibration on a daily basis. Since this situation represents a significant daily exposure to tremolite asbestos, I have suggested to my immediate supervisor, David Arnovitz, that the ceiling be sealed temporarily or permanently. Mr. Arnovitz replied that exposure from asbestos takes many years for any potential illness to occur. I disagree with Mr. Arnovitz and believe that any additional exposure to the employees of the building should be minimized and eliminated. The EPA suggests in its website to, quote, seal any spaces, cracks, or gaps in the ceiling or around light fixtures through which asbestos could escape from the attic, unquote. Your assistance in this matter would be greatly appreciated. There's an employee of Norfolk Southern in this building 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. I firmly believe that any additional or potential exposure to asbestos to these employees should be ended as soon as possible. On April 15th of 2004, I saw Dr. Kelly again, and he wrote this note. Mr. Height is fit to return to work on April 19th, 2004. However, he cannot work in the BO Tower. Norfolk Southern held their first of 3 disciplinary investigations on April 29th of 2004. Present at the investigation were Charlie Litton, the union representative, Norfolk Southern trainmaster David Arnovitz, and the Norfolk Southern hearing officer Lee A. Timmons. During the investigation, I was repeatedly asked who had received a copy of the videotape. Some of the testimony had obviously been cut out of the transcript because questioning about the videotape starts with, "Who else did you give copies of this tape to?" I was asked if I gave a copy of the videotape to a city official, state official, my medical doctor, or federal officials. I have no idea what was cut out of the transcript. During the investigation, I made it clear that my coworkers and I had been made sick from the conditions of the building. I also provided a copy of the lab report from Delisle to Mr. Timmons and said, it came back with 5% tremolite asbestos, which is really a problem because you can take a broom and bang on the ceiling and the stuff falls through the cracks. On May 5th of 2004, David Arnovitz sent me another certified letter accusing me of violating Norfolk Southern's Rule R for a second time. Evidently, I had, quote, provided and allowed an unauthorized person to view a videotape of company property without proper authority, unquote. Who was this mystery person? Would this mystery person be a witness at the investigation to be held on May 13th of 2004? A letter was sent to me on May 6th of 2004 by Mr. Lee A. Timmons. I had been suspended for 80 days, from March 9th to May 28th. Since the transcript from the first investigation was altered, I certainly could not go to a second investigation without bringing my own audio recorder. I checked with 2 local law enforcement agencies and was assured that Michigan law allowed me to use an audio recorder. My digital Radio Shack audio recorder was in my breast pocket when I entered the second investigation on May 13, 2004. Charlie Litton, the union representative, David Arnovitz, Norfolk Southern trainmaster, and a new hearing officer, Walt Wilson, were at the Radisson Hotel for the second Norfolk Southern formal investigation. The mysterious person who had seen the videotape turned out to be my physician, Dr. R. Michael Kelly, and Norfolk Southern certainly could not allow me to have him as a witness. They had my work release form from Dr. Kelly with a note which said, quote, for 1504 per Dave Arnovitz, with his telephone number. He is not able to accommodate this restriction, Mr. Height's job, unquote. There was also a fax cover sheet that said, quote, the NS Medical Department has received your work release which advises Mr. Height is fit to return to work on 4/19/04. However, he can't work in the BO tower. Please advise why Mr. Height cannot work in the BO tower. What medical condition is preventing him from working in the tower? Unquote. This memo came from Beverly Dozier of the Norfolk Southern Medical Department. On April 16, 2004, Dr. Kelly's faxed reply was straight and to the point. Quote, I have seen a videotape of the conditions of the BO tower. The presence of asbestos, as well as the other conditions of the building, make an unsafe workplace. Unquote. After the investigation had ended, I was unable to get my digital audio recorder to replay the recording of the investigation. I placed my audio recorder in a locked, fireproof document file. On May 18th of 2004, Mr. W.L. Wilson sent me a certified letter stating that, quote, you are hereby dismissed in all capacities from Norfolk Southern Railroad, unquote. My days of inhaling tremolite asbestos and other nasty stuff had come to an end. Shortly after receiving the letter notifying me of being dismissed in all capacities from Norfolk Southern Railroad, the union rep, Charlie Litton, called me on the telephone. All of Charlie's objections and references to objections had been deleted from the officially accurate Norfolk Southern transcript. It was obvious that testimony had been removed, added, and changed. This second transcript had again not been signed by the person who had transcribed it. Since my audio tape recorder appeared to have not functioned properly, it certainly appeared that I had been screwed. On May 22nd, 2004, I wrote a letter to John Brennan of Myosha in Lansing, Michigan. This letter explained that I had been fired by Norfolk Southern with supporting documents. I also complained that Myosha had not included the union representative, Charlie Litton, in either of the inspections done by Myosha. The union representative has numerous tasks and roles in the inspection process that are meant to protect the union members. On June 1st of 2004, John Brennan of Myosha answered my letter. Mr. Brennan made no mention of my complaint about being fired by Norfolk Southern. I did not know at the time, but I had 30 days to file a complaint to a specific state of Michigan agency on a specific form. Mr. Brennan evidently had no intention of providing this important information to me or of passing my complaint on to that agency. During the summer of 2004, the Transportation Communications International Union in Suffolk, Virginia, asked several times what was missing, changed, and added to the 8-page, officially accurate Norfolk Southern transcript from the second disciplinary investigation in which I was dismissed in all capacities from Norfolk Southern Railroad. I pored over the transcript several times to try to determine what was gone, changed, and added to the 8-page, officially accurate Norfolk Southern transcript. On June 9, 2004, Myosha mailed out the inspection report, which was signed by Mr. Blaine's supervisor, Charles Picardi. Here's what it said. Myosha recommended cleaning periodically to remove dirt and dust. There was absolutely no evidence of mold found. There was no problem with appealing lead-based paint from dust or air samples. And guess what else? The vermiculite insulation sample, which Myosha's inspector David Blaine had not taken, seen, or witnessed being taken, contained absolutely no asbestos. Norfolk Southern's private contractor also found absolutely no asbestos.
The air testing indicated approximately 1/3 of the legal limit for asbestos fibers in the air, but MIOSHA could not identify the fibers collected in the filter. The air sample was analyzed by Norfolk Southern's contractor and contained absolutely no asbestos. Mr. Blaine and MIOSHA also did not observe any mice droppings in the building. Norfolk Southern was fined $50 by MIOSHA for not having the required MIOSHA poster in the building. The samples taken during the MIOSHA inspection were quite interesting and amusing. NSBO2, bulk sample of paint from window above operator's desk. NSBO3, wipe sample from operator's desk. NSBO4, wipe sample of operator's coffee cup. NSBO5, wipe sample of the top of the microwave oven, outer side, on which a refrigerator sits. NSBO6, wipe sample of refrigerator top, outer side. NSBO7, wipe sample of the operator's right hand. Then NSBO10, bulk sample of vermiculite. It is important to mention that all of the Norfolk Southern employees present at the inspection verified that many more than 6 dust samples were taken. This seems apparent because the samples are numbered 2 through 10 without number 1, 8, or 9. Here is quite a strange and contradictory portion of the report. Quote, in the event renovation, demolition, or disturbance activities are performed on the facility, for example, sealing, caulking the cracks in the ceiling panels, etc., extensive bulk sampling and analysis be conducted to determine whether the vermiculite insulation or any other materials are asbestos containing, unquote. The state of Michigan and MIOSHA are actually saying that sealing the cracks utilizing tools like these can actually create a hazardous situation, but that a locomotive passing the building at 40 miles per hour and vibration, which could be registered on the seismic scale, is absolutely safe. At that point, the employees working in the building and I were pretty much screwed. There seemed to be absolutely no hope. Well, not quite yet. On July 6th of 2004, Mr. R.G. Lockery, the Norfolk Southern Director of Labor Relations, and Mr. D.H. Mullen, the Norfolk Southern Assistant Director of Labor Relations, filed an answer to a TCU union grievance for my 80-day suspension. This quote regarding the MIOSHA report is quite interesting. Quote, in a letter dated June 9, 2004, MIOSHA reported the results of tests run by the independent industrial hygiene consultant and MIOSHA that proved that BO Tower at Kalamazoo, Michigan was a safe place to work, unquote. The MIOSHA whistleblower's stern warning from 4 months earlier, in March of 2004, had now come to fruition. On July 28, 2004, I wrote this letter to Governor Jennifer M. Granholm with a copy to Douglas J. Kalinowski, the director of MIOSHA. Dear Governor Granholm, enclosed is a videotape of my former place of employment with Norfolk Southern. There is also a copy of a MIOSHA inspection report from an inspection of the facility. There are other documents included relating directly to this situation. I am requesting that the behavior of MIOSHA be investigated in this entire inspection process. There are many serious issues involving this situation which must be investigated. If MIOSHA cannot find violations in this building, then the notion that MIOSHA is a protector of employees is ridiculous. Personally, I do not believe that any review process by MIOSHA will be worthwhile in this situation. without a fair and thorough investigation of the entire inspection and all other information, there is little hope for having this situation resolved satisfactorily. There is currently a federal OSHA investigation into direct violations of OSHA regulations. I look forward to your response. On August 4th, 2004, Mr. Lockery and Mr. Mullen answered the TCU union's appeal for my being fired in all capacities from Norfolk Southern Railroad. On page 4, this letter states, the union alleges that they made numerous objections as to the charge during the hearing held May 13, 2004. However, a review of the transcript of the hearing refutes this allegation since these alleged objections do not exist. Additionally, the facts reveal that while the representative for the organization, or union, present at the hearing may have initially thought to raise objections, a signed statement from the hearing officer, copy attached, reveals once he viewed the exhibits, he elected not to make any objections. So the issue of objections is irrelevant because none were made. This signed, handwritten statement dated July 30th of 2004 from the hearing officer, Walt Wilson, also contains a fax verification from a 313 area code to Norfolk Southern headquarters in Virginia. Quote, Miss Golden, the following information is missing or cannot be heard from the height tapes or transcript. Mr. Wilson to Mr. Litton, do you have any objections? Answer from Mr. Litton, that cannot be heard. I do, but after seeing these documents, I have none. Mr. Height then interjects. I do. I object to you're having access to my medical records. I then stated to him that his medical records was not a part of the Rule R investigation, so I overruled his objections at that point in the investigation. Walter L. Wilson, District Superintendent. Mr. Lockery and Mr. Mullins continue on page 4 of their document dated August 4th, 2004. Quote, the hearing officer further stated that the claimant was vociferous and out of line when the organization representative stated that he had no objections after reviewing the exhibits provided him at the beginning of the hearing. And furthermore, an incomplete transcript, which the carrier, Norfolk Southern, most vehemently denies exists in this case, is not a fatal flaw in the discipline process, given the fact that the claimant's rights were not impaired. Unquote. On August 20th, 2004, Governor Jennifer M. Granholm answered my letter. Dear Mr. Height, thank you for writing me to share your concerns about my OSHA violations with Norfolk Southern. The success of our democracy is built on the idea that citizens take an active role and engage their elected officials. I understand what a frustrating situation this must be for you. To help address your request for an investigation into my OSHA, I have taken the liberty of forwarding your information to Director David C. Hollister's office in the Department of Labor and Economic Growth for their careful review and consideration. As you may know, the DLEG has a responsibility for regulating and licensing in the state. I have asked them to look into your specific situation and to report their findings directly to you. Again, thank you for contacting my office. The diverse opinions and ideas of the people of Michigan make our state strong and give us a solid foundation upon which to build. By actively participating in your state government, not only are you proof that our democracy is thriving, you are also helping to move Michigan forward. Sincerely yours, Governor Jennifer M. Granholm. In early September of 2004, Labor Day weekend rolled around, and I fished my Radio Shack digital tape recorder out of my fireproof lockbox to check one last time to see if possibly I had recorded the investigation. Well, color me stupid, because it was there all along.
It is imperative that that each person be properly identified and speak clearly so that an accurate transcript can be prepared. Okay, Mr. Litton. Should I reread this, or is it okay with Henry? Okay, we're re-entering this investigation notice and the certified notice for the second time with the okay of District Chairman Litton. Rule R, that was heard in hearing April 29th, and he was questioned about the videotape at that time. Okay, that wasn't a part of Rule R, so I'm going to have to overrule the objection at this time. If you're tired. Okay, Mr. Litton, would you please state your name, position, with the carry, and affiliation with the organization. Paul Litton, I'm the District Chairman, TCU, great job there. Okay, are you agreeable to representing Mr. Height? Yes, I am. Okay, do you understand the purpose of the investigation? Yes, we know. So I got these papers here, and I got very prepared. Yeah, so you do understand? Yeah. Okay, you ready to proceed? Yes, I am. No comment. I'm going to answer you again. No comment. Do you know who Dr. Kelly is? Oh, I'm very familiar with him. I'm familiar with his opinion that you're far to be. No one should be working in any of but you're damaging the health of myself and my coworkers by continuing to keep that building open. Okay, so you know who Dr. Kelly is, and you have met with him, so he did sign this release form. And he saw that medical, or that lab report that there's asbestos found through the ceiling. Do you have any idea how you would have viewed this video? No comment. Okay, I have no further questions. Do you have any questions, Mr. No, I do not. Okay, do you have anything else you'd like to add, Mr. This is about my house, too. And what is appropriate for my house? I don't want to do asbestos. I don't want to be exposed to black mold. I don't want to be exposed to lead paint. My doctor doesn't want anybody to be exposed to those things, and they are being exposed right now as we speak, 250 yards from here. Okay, Mr. Hyde, do you have anything else you'd like to add, Residency Security? No comment, Your Excellency. Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Mr. Chairman, other than the exceptions I made earlier? No. Okay. No other comments?
There was one other thing that occurred after the official Norfolk Southern disciplinary investigation, which proved to be extremely important. Fortunately, now I had it. On September 11th, 2004, I sent copies of the audio recording on CDs from Norfolk Southern's second disciplinary investigation to the TCU Union, along with an affidavit under penalty of perjury testifying to the accuracy and integrity of the recording. After receiving the recording, Union representative and Norfolk Southern employee Charles Litton told me that Norfolk Southern had made multiple telephone solicitations of perjury and had sent a prepared false statement on Norfolk Southern letterhead to his home on or about September 14, 2004. Mr. Litton told me that he did not sign the solicitation of perjury and forwarded the unsigned solicitation of perjury to the TCU System Board number 96 office in Suffolk, Virginia. On September 17th, 2004, Mr. Douglas J. Kalinowski, the director of MIOSHA, sent me this letter. Dear Mr. Height, your letter of July 28, 2004 to Governor Granholm has been forwarded to me for investigation and response. The documents and videotape that accompanied your letter depict uncomfortable and undesirable conditions. However, many of the conditions noted in the videotape do not constitute violations of MIOSHA workplace safety or health requirements. Even though the conditions are less than desirable, an example is the peeling paint that is quite pervasive in the video. While it creates a mess on the floor and other surfaces, it is not in and of itself a violation of a MIOSHA rule. The other concern with this paint is a possible lead exposure. The laboratory test result you provided indicate that there is some lead in the paint chips. Tests conducted by MIOSHA did not identify a lead hazard to the employees working in the facility. Regarding your concern with the insulation in the ceiling, the compliance officer took multiple samples, all of which proved negative for asbestos. We are not disputing the test results you submitted. However, our investigation did not produce similar results. It is not possible to use the test results you provided as rules of evidence require that we take the samples and maintain a chain of custody for the samples. This bears repeating again. We take the samples and maintain a chain of custody for the samples. On September 21st, 2004, I sent this letter to Mr. Kalinowski and Governor Granholm. Dear Mr. Kalinowski, I received your letter today regarding the workplace known as BO Tower and owned and operated by Norfolk Southern. Please be advised of the following information. As you stated, quote, your concern with the insulation in the ceiling, the compliance officer took multiple samples. I regret to inform you that your compliance officer took no samples and did not view the samples being taken. The compliance officer told me this himself in a telephone conversation. This was confirmed by a Norfolk Southern official at the inspection and can be confirmed by direct evidence. Mr. David Blaine did not enter the attic because he said that he did not have the proper safety equipment. I am including a copy of the notes I made from that telephone conversation with Mr. Blaine. As you state, quote, we take the samples and maintain a chain of custody for those samples, unquote. But it seems, quote, chain of custody, unquote, does not include taking the samples or even viewing the samples being taken. Again, I have definitive proof of the situation from another source that was at the inspection when the samples were taken. The real problem in regard to asbestos is, number one, there is tremolite asbestos in the insulation. Number two, the insulation is falling through the cracks in the ceiling and there are visible particles of vermiculite in the workplace. I am begging you to please order Norfolk Southern to seal the cracks in the ceiling for the safety and health of the employees of that building. I am begging you to intervene. The sole reason for the telephone call from Mr. Blaine was a panicked attempt to discover what investigation was being performed. Mr. Blaine was fearful there was an investigation into the inspection process. If Mr. Blaine did not fear an investigation, I would not have received a telephone call from him. A message was left with your office today that I do not wish for any employee of MIOSHA to contact me on the telephone. MIOSHA personnel have relied solely on telephone contact
and the deniability which comes with telephone calls. For example, my word against yours. It is possible that I would be willing to meet in person with State of Michigan officials to discuss my concerns. However, after reading your letter, I do not believe that a meeting would be anything other than a big waste of my time and money. What I do expect is that MIOSHA will continue to claim the building contains no asbestos or other health problems, and even to do so in a court of law as an expert witness for Norfolk Southern. Please look toward the ceiling and walls of your office and be thankful that there is no asbestos falling through the cracks or mold growing on the walls. On September 25th, 2004, I sent another letter to Mr. Douglas J. Kalinowski and Governor Granholm. Dear Mr. Kalinowski, this is a portion of an audio tape made immediately after the investigation which Norfolk Southern performed in order to dismiss me for service. I'll let you listen to the whole thing if you would like. You can even see the transcript that Norfolk Southern provided, which is significantly edited, and read the signed statement from the hearing officer, which constitutes perjury. A little fraud and perjury doesn't seem to be a problem for Norfolk Southern. The real point is that your inspector, David Blaine, did not view the samples being taken or directly take the samples. Does the sample which was taken by Clayton and MIOSHA match a chemical analysis which identifies whether the vermiculite has the same qualities in chemistry and color in comparison to the vermiculite in the building? Or maybe those samples had an origin in the garden center at Meyer. I would be pleased to provide a sample of the vermiculite from the building, which I still have in my possession. I will even provide a signed affidavit under penalty of perjury, which states that the sample was collected from BO Tower. There are many other problems with the inspection process, MIOSHA, and Norfolk Southern. I'd be willing to provide a detailed summary of those problems with supporting documentation. However, I would like a full investigation into the conduct of MIOSHA employees and an investigation into the criminal conduct of Norfolk Southern in retaliating against me. This is not the type of conduct which should be condoned in any way. If such conduct is condoned, it will be repeated many times in the future on citizens of Michigan. Maybe it already has. On October 12, 2004, my patience was wearing thin. That day, I telephoned Mr. Kalinowski and left a voicemail message. Mr. Kalinowski returned the call by leaving a message on my answering machine. In that recorded message, Mr. Kalinowski told me that he was not pleased that a MIOSHA whistleblower had warned me about MIOSHA malfeasance. Mr. Kalinowski indicated that one sample of the vermiculite was not enough, and that there would be another investigation by the asbestos division of MIOSHA. Well, hot damn, there was hope. I also sent this letter on October 12, 2004. Dear Mr. Kalinowski, in reference to the phone message left on your voicemail today, I would like to emphasize the importance of testing actual dust samples from BO Tower. The report from the testing done on March 11th indicates the following dust samples. See attached page. Were taken. 1. Bulk sample of paint from window near desk. 2. Wipe sample from operator's desk. 3. Wipe sample of operator's coffee cup. 4. Wipe sample of top of microwave oven. 5. Wipe sample of refrigerator top. 6. Wipe sample of operator's right hand. 7. Bulk sample of vermiculite. As is evident in the video provided to MIOSHA, there are many areas of accumulated dust which can be tested. On October 21, 2004, John Walker and George Howard from MIOSHA's Asbestos Division
came to Norfolk Southern's BO Tower for a second inspection. A private consultant employed by Norfolk Southern was again allowed to accompany the MIOSHA inspectors. The bizarre actions, threats, and intimidating behavior by Norfolk Southern management on that day were shameful, despicable, and bizarre. The following day, on October 22nd, 2004, Mr. Douglas J. Kalinowski, the director of MIOSHA, sent this letter to me. Dear Mr. Height, this letter is in response to your September 30th, 2004 correspondence to David Hollister, Director, Department of Labor and Economic Growth. Since the time you sent this letter, I have been in communication with you to advise you that we are reevaluating the issues that you have raised and may take additional action. Should additional action be taken, we will provide you with a courtesy copy of our Dear Mr. Burgess, please find enclosed my Norfolk Southern ID card. I had inadvertently failed to return this plastic card when dismissed. The card has been cut into numerous pieces and is taped to a piece of paper. Also enclosed is a signed statement from Walt Wilson. This signed statement is false and appears to constitute perjury. Perjury is a felony and is most definitely a violation of Norfolk Southern General Conduct Rules and Code of Ethics. Norfolk Southern is in possession of the audio recording from the investigation which this statement makes reference. I certainly didn't expect a response. However, a few weeks later, it came. Although Mr. Walter L. Wilson's signed statement from July 30th, 2004 was completely false and baseless, Mr. Wilson was quite honest and understanding immediately after the disciplinary investigation on May 13th, On November 19, 2004, Mr. Larry Panino, a Norfolk Southern internal auditor, called me on the telephone. Mr. Panino was responding to my October letter that was sent to Gary Bassett, the manager of ethics compliance for Norfolk Southern. Mr. Panino requested a copy of my audio recording from the second Norfolk Southern disciplinary investigation in which I was dismissed in all capacities from Norfolk Southern Railroad. I responded in writing with the conditions under which the recording would be provided to Norfolk Southern internal audit staff. My letter states, "It is necessary to point out that Norfolk Southern should already be in possession of one audio tape made during the investigation. This tape was used to provide a transcript of the investigation, and the transcript was subsequently significantly altered in many ways. It is my sincere opinion that criminal conduct on the part of the employees of Norfolk Southern constitutes more than a violation of Norfolk Southern general conduct rules and code of ethics, along with state and federal law. Criminal conduct such as perjury, subornation of perjury, or any other criminal activity promotes a hostile, unsafe work environment. The sad and ironic point to this whole mess is that Norfolk Southern has spent many times the money and effort it would take to make BO Tower a safe place to work. Today, the building has still not been cleaned in 5 years. Asbestos still falls through cracks in the ceiling, and yet Norfolk Southern has already paid much more than it would cost to make the building safe for its employees. I would bet that Norfolk Southern will also be willing to pay for a copy to be made from my digital tape recorder. So much for, quote, safety first, unquote." On December 20th, 2004, Mr. Panino did answer my letter. Dear Mr. Height, this refers to your letter to me on November 19th, in which you propose furnishing Norfolk Southern a copy of an audio recording and or a transcript of such recording that you made of a formal investigation held May 13th of 2004, subject to a number of stated conditions. You have contended in conversation with me that the carrier's hearing transcript is inaccurate in that a portion is missing containing several objections allegedly made by your labor organization, and that the recording you made would demonstrate this. As I previously advised you, I would welcome the opportunity to review the audio recording you claim to have, or any other evidence that you have that bears on your claim that Norfolk Southern officials have produced an inaccurate transcript of the May 13th formal investigation. As I hope you can understand, however, we cannot agree to the conditions you would impose on our receipt of such information, including limitations on what use we make of the information, the extent of information provided, and to whom the information is provided, requirements that we turn over to you or your attorney certain carrier information, and the possibility of other conditions to be later imposed. Again, I would be more than happy to review any information you can provide to me that would support your contentions, including the audio recording you claim to have, but I cannot agree to conditions such as the above upon your review, and I would add that providing us less than the complete original or complete copy of the original certified to be true and accurate copy by an independent professional would be of dubious value to our investigation. If you are unwilling or unable to provide any supporting information for your contentions, we will have no choice but to close our investigation for lack of supporting evidence, because we have identified no other facts supporting your contentions. Nothing herein is intended to derogate from the procedures of the Railway Labor Act and the applicable collective bargaining agreement for contesting your discipline following the May 13th hearing, which I understand your labor representative is pursuing on your behalf. Upon receiving Mr. Panino's letter, sent a few days earlier, I had had enough fraud, perjury, corporate corruption, bizarre threats, and intimidation of Norfolk Southern and my OSHA employees. And on December 23rd at 2:23 p.m., I left a voicemail message with wholly appropriate profanity for Mr. Panino on his voicemail. Dear Mr. Panino, Scott Height in snowy Kalamazoo, Michigan, I got your letter today and I'm sending you out a couple CDs. I may even send a copy to Mr. Good. See what he thinks of the weasels and their perjury, subornation and perjury. But hey, you know, it's no big deal. Martha Stewart's in jail, but hey, your boys will get a fucking medal. I'm going to tell you what, motherfucker. You have a good fucking Christmas, and do not fucking call me. Call my fucking attorney. But you got these fucking things coming in the mail. I'm a little bit tired of you goddamn weasels. I have copies going to Good with your goddamn transcripts. So you guys want to pull shit, all perjury, and ask union people to lie, sign false statements. Well, this is what you are going to get, so yeah, your boys stick right by 'em. Merry fucking Christmas, asshole. On December 23rd of 2004, I also sent this letter to Mr. Larry Panino, Internal Auditor, and to Norfolk Southern CEO David R. Good. Dear Mr. Panino, this refers to your letter to me on December 20th, in which you refer to an audio recording made by me during the disciplinary investigation held by Norfolk Southern in May of 2004. Your letter states that I contend that the Norfolk Southern transcript of the investigation is inaccurate and that a portion is missing. In fact, the transcript is heavily edited with numerous deletions, additions, and other nefarious actions taken to alter the original content. You did not mention in your letter that you are in possession of a signed statement from Mr. Walt Wilson, which is clearly perjury. To clarify just what is going on with this whole situation, I am sending you a copy on CD of the investigation. If necessary, I will provide a signed and notarized affidavit stating that the recording is a true and accurate copy and will state under penalty of perjury. If Norfolk Southern requires a copy that is made directly from the digital recorder or a transcript made directly from the digital recorder, my attorney can supply that material if and only if Norfolk Southern pays all costs for obtaining the material. The recording starts when I entered the public building and ends when Mr. Wilson stopped the recording device owned by Norfolk Southern. The CD contains two identical recordings in two different sound formats. A copy of the transcript provided by Norfolk Southern is also included. There are other Norfolk Southern documents which attest to the accuracy of this transcript. However, the transcript is not signed. The transcript, as provided by Norfolk Southern, is a fraudulent document. It is important to mention that David O. Arnovitz and Walt Wilson telephoned the union representative, Charles Litton, at his home and pressured Mr. Litton to state in writing that he had made no objections in the investigation. Mr. Litton was then sent a letter on Norfolk Southern stationery which stated that Mr. Litton had withdrawn his objections at the end of the investigation. The letter was actually a signed statement for Mr. Litton to sign and return. This is a solicitation of perjury and subornation of perjury. A copy of this material is also being sent to David R. Good. I believe Mr. Good should be aware of the activities of his employees. Personally, I am shocked and appalled at the behavior of Norfolk Southern and its employees. Perjury, fraud, and subordination of perjury are nothing to be taken lightly, as President Clinton and Martha Stewart were both charged with these crimes. It is important to point out that Norfolk Southern already has an audio tape of this investigation from which the transcript was produced. You do not need the recording which I am sending you, but I am sending it to you. On December 26th of 2004, another letter and supporting documentation was sent to Mr. Panino and Mr. Good. Dear Mr. Good and Mr. Panino, I wish to provide additional information to the information provided in my letter of December 23rd, included as Exhibit A, and the audio recording provided with the letter. Along with this letter, there is a binder enclosed which contains numerous documents which are referred to in this letter. In a December 20th letter from Mr. Panino, included as Exhibit B, it is stated that you contended in conversation with me that the carrier's hearing transcript is inaccurate and that a portion is missing containing several objections made by your labor organization, and the recording you made would demonstrate this. This assertion of what I stated is at best fictional and false. This summation of the telephone conversation is contrary to any actual conversation and an outright lie and falsehood. In a letter to Norfolk Southern, dated October 26th, and included as Exhibit C, I clearly stated. Also enclosed is a signed statement from Walt Wilson. This signed statement is false and appears to constitute perjury. Perjury is a felony and is most definitely a violation of Norfolk Southern General Conduct Rules and Code of Ethics. Norfolk Southern is in possession of the audio recording from the investigation which the statement makes reference. In my letter of November 19th, which is referenced by Norfolk Southern and included as Exhibit D, I clearly state, this tape was used to provide a transcript of the investigation, and the transcript was subsequently significantly altered in many ways. It is my sincere opinion that criminal conduct on the part of the employees of Norfolk Southern constitutes more than a violation of Norfolk Southern General Conduct Rules and Code of Ethics, along with state and federal law. Criminal conduct such as perjury, subornation and perjury, or any other criminal activity promotes a hostile, unsafe work environment. A copy of the Norfolk Southern Code of Ethics is included as Exhibit E. Because of fraud perpetrated in producing a false transcript, perjury by the hearing officer stemming from the May 13th investigation, and solicitation of perjury by the hearing officer and Dave Arnovitz, it was necessary to report this criminal conduct to Brig Burgess and internal audits as indicated in the Norfolk Southern Code of Ethics on page 2. This booklet outlines the responsibility of Norfolk Southern employees to report anything that may reasonably constitute a violation of this Code of Ethics. If an employee has reason to suspect wrongdoing or is aware of any waste, fraud, abuse, or other policy or rule violation, he or she must report it immediately to his or her supervisor. If for some reason the employee does not wish to or cannot contact the supervisor, the employee must contact the appropriate department or division head, which would be Brig Burgess, or call internal audit hotline with their phone number. The criminal and nefarious conduct required to make dozens of deletions, additions, and changes to the official Norfolk Southern audio transcript from its beginning until the end is clearly tampering with evidence and fraud. The reckless disregard of state and federal law by Walt Wilson in producing a false affidavit is perjury, which is a felony. The Norfolk Southern written and verbal solicitations of perjury to Charles Litton are clearly subordination of perjury, which is also a felony. The Norfolk Southern Code of Ethics states, high ethical standards have always been a key ingredient of success at Norfolk Southern. This Code of Ethics reiterates Norfolk Southern's long-standing tradition of integrity. Abiding by the Code of Ethics is vital to the achievement of Norfolk Southern's corporate vision. Norfolk Southern's reputation for fairness and integrity is a most prized asset. In dealing with people inside and outside Norfolk Southern, employees must conduct business with fairness, honesty, respect, and good judgment. In all dealings, Norfolk Southern's integrity must remain intact and unquestioned. Any violation of the Code of Ethics by employees will result in appropriate disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment. Directors, officers, or employees of Norfolk Southern will observe the highest ethical, legal, and professional standards in dealing with each other, stockholders, and the communities they serve, and will provide equal opportunity and a safe, supportive work environment for one another, and comply with the letter and spirit of applicable legal and corporate requirements. Although not intended to be all-inclusive, these principles provide a framework for Norfolk Southern's Code of Ethics. In all instances, honesty and integrity are expected. In addition, employees must observe other applicable laws that affect corporate activities. Whenever there is a question about legality of any conduct, past, present, or proposed, contact the law department. For further information, please see Corporate Procedure 2.24. Compliance. As a general rule, if employees are in doubt concerning any activity with which they or fellow employees may be involved, they should talk to their supervisor. If contacting the supervisor is not practical, use the internal audit hotline. In the certification from the Code of Ethics, which is to be signed by each employee and retained in that employee's personnel file, it clearly states, I am not engaged in and will not engage in any conduct that violates the Code of Ethics, and will promptly report to the appropriate authority any violation of which I become aware. I recognize that Norfolk Southern is committed to the Code of Ethics and its corporate policies and procedures, and that any violation will result in appropriate disciplinary action ranging from reprimand up to and including dismissal. Mr. Good is quoted as saying at the 21st Annual Shareholders Meeting, Good also said that the company is pledged to honesty and integrity in governing our corporate affairs. We recognize the importance of sound corporate governance principles. They always have been a hallmark of Norfolk Southern, and we know that it is important to you as shareholders. It is absurd to assume that Norfolk Southern accepts or condones fraud, perjury, subornation of perjury, corruption, brazen falsehoods, and lying, character assassination, and overt disregard for employee safety when regarding the many lofty standards set by Norfolk Southern. Unfortunately, those lofty standards cannot stand the light of day. In my experience with Norfolk Southern, it is absurd for me to believe that Norfolk Southern is committed to the highest standard of ethics and accountability, a history of integrity, honesty and integrity, or even respect for the law. My experience with Norfolk Southern is in sharp contrast to the high standards portrayed by Norfolk Southern. How does criminal conduct, and especially felonies, relate to any code of conduct for a business? I often wonder where the criminal and corrupt conduct of Norfolk Southern will lead, and fear the next criminal and corrupt bright idea. Nothing is more pathetic than catching and confronting a liar, a thief, a con, or a perjurer, and it is nauseating to experience the brazen corrupt and criminal conduct of Norfolk Southern. I fear that there will be an escalation beyond fraud, perjury, subornation of perjury, and other criminal acts. I fear what comes next and how it may be directed towards me and my former co-workers. No matter how much corruption and crime suits the goals of Norfolk Southern, no employee of Norfolk Southern should be a victim of corruption or crimes. My character has been repeatedly questioned by Norfolk Southern. I was even accused of vociferous behavior during an investigation which you have an audio recording. Numerous brazen lies and falsehoods have been printed by Norfolk Southern in documents which were presented to me, or to my union and to me. I would be happy to entertain any questions regarding my integrity, character, judgment, honesty, and accountability, as those qualities are described in speeches in Norfolk Southern's Code of Ethics. How many of the changes made to the Norfolk Southern transcript from the investigation were meant to harm my credibility? Why would Norfolk Southern commit fraud and perjury to harm my credibility? There are 2 copies of affidavits included which have been provided. See Exhibit H and I. These affidavits deal with the authenticity of the audio recordings and the false affidavit provided by Walt Wilson, the hearing officer. It is important to mention what happened when the disciplinary hearing ended on May 13th of 2004. The audio recording provided to you is meant to accurately and completely document the actual disciplinary hearing. My tape recorder captured more of what Walt Wilson had to say a few seconds after the investigation ended. Mr. Wilson stated after the investigation had ended, "Thank you guys for showing up, and I appreciate your impartiality, and I understand your concern there." Mr. Wilson realized that the Norfolk Southern audio recorder was still recording his voice. Mr. Wilson then rewound the tape to the end of the investigation. All of this is easily heard on a recording which I do have, and a bit more. The same person who signed a false affidavit and has falsely accused me of being vociferous and out of line can clearly be heard saying that I appreciate your impartiality and I understand your concern. If you want to talk about integrity and honesty, I think Mr. Wilson's 11-second statement pretty much sums it up. The ugliest part of this whole mess is what I have witnessed with my own eyes. I have seen visible particles of vermiculite insulation which have fallen through the cracks of the building known as BO Tower. For my own peace of mind, I took a sample of that insulation to the closest lab for analysis. The sample had an asbestos content of 5% tremolite asbestos. I know what I've seen with my own eyes, and that will haunt me for the rest of my life. Because of the false allegations that have been made against me by the management of Norfolk Southern, I am not capable of speaking to any Norfolk Southern employee or representative without being able to protect myself from further false allegations and lies. I could produce quite a list of allegations made against me that are false, and most have decidedly proven to be false. I think that it is time for Norfolk Southern to take care of its own problems with integrity and ethics and stop trying to damage my reputation for its own means. On January 5th of 2005, Mr. Larry Panino and Mr. Wayne W. Lockwood, the Vice President and President of the Roanoke Area Chapter Number 68 of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, sent this email to Mark D. Peralt, a Norfolk Southern attorney, and Dale H. Mullen from Norfolk Southern's Labor Relations. Gentlemen, Wayne Lockwood and I have reviewed Scott Height's company hearing recording of May 13th. Portions of the recording were inaudible and difficult to decipher. Yet we found no evidence to support Mr. Height's claim that Norfolk Southern Corporation deliberately and intentionally falsified said transcript. Height alleges that Walt Wilson's July 30, 2004 statement is false and contradictory, citing 4 examples. See Height's General Affidavit dated September 15, 2004. Well, I had 2 affidavits, but we'll keep on going. Our review indicates that Mr. Litton does say, I have an objection. Rule R. That was part of the hearing April 29th. He, Height, I prefer Mr. Height, Mr. Panino, was questioned about the videotape at that time. Wilson then responds, okay, that wasn't part of Rule R, so I'm going to overrule it at this time. We discovered several minor omissions from the transcript that seemed to be the result of poor audio quality. We reconstructed to the best of our ability most of these omissions and found nothing to support Height's allegations of company misconduct. Thank you, Larry Panino, Certified Fraud Examiner, Certified Fraud Specialist. Of 2005, David Arnovitz sent me yet another certified letter by certified mail and by UPS overnight. Quote, Dear Mr. Height, you are hereby notified to report to the Radisson Hotel, 100 West Michigan Avenue in Kalamazoo, Michigan, 49007 at 11 a.m. Thursday, January 20th, 2005, for a formal investigation to determine your responsibility, if any, in connection with your violation of Norfolk Southern Safety and General Conduct Rule GCR-1 and conduct unbecoming an employee, in that you used offensive language and made inappropriate personal comments in a telephone voicemail message to carrier Officer Al Panino at 2:23 p.m. on December 23rd of 2004. If you desire to have a representative and or witnesses present at the formal investigation, please arrange for their presence. Believe it or not, I was being double extra secret duty dismissed in all capacities from Norfolk Southern Railroad. I had been dismissed in all capacities from Norfolk Southern Railroad 8 months before, and now it was deja vu all over again. When I showed up for the 3rd investigation, there was a new Norfolk Southern hearing officer, Gary Shepard. Larry Panino had flown from Norfolk, Virginia to Kalamazoo, Michigan in a snowstorm. David O. Arnovitz and my union representative, Charlie Litton, were there also. At this 3rd official disciplinary investigation of Norfolk Southern Railroad, the members of Norfolk Southern management accused me of using the dreaded F word, etc., etc., blah, blah, blah. Mr. Arnovitz made serious accusations of violations of Norfolk Southern rules and regulations. And then I was allowed to question Mr. Arnovitz. I held this CD in my hand and asked Mr. Arnovitz if he used that type of language. Of course, Mr. Arnovitz vehemently denied using fuck, fucked, or any variation of fuck. That's when I told him he used it twice, within seconds of me entering the door at the 2nd investigation held on May 13th of 2004, in which I was dismissed in all capacities from Norfolk Southern Railroad. That's when Mr. Shepard adjourned the formal investigation to consult with the corporate headquarters. Gary Shepard restarted the formal double-secret, dismissed in all capacities from Norfolk Southern Railroad investigation about an hour later. The investigation was a sad, pathetic affair, and much more like something which was reminiscent of the former Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, Saddam Hussein's Iraq, or maybe just simply David R. Goods, Norfolk Southern. On January 21st of 2005, the second MIOSHA report was in my mailbox. Before this second MIOSHA report was written, attorneys employed by Norfolk Southern had agreed to follow all of the written recommendations of MIOSHA. Here's what the second report said. Some vermiculite that is mined contained trace amounts of asbestos minerals. The amount of asbestos minerals present in the vermiculite ore rarely exceeds the regulatory limit of greater than 1% by weight. The state of Michigan received a vast majority of its vermiculite from a mine located in Libby, Montana, and owned by W.R. Grace. This mine's vermiculite is now recognized as containing trace amounts of asbestos mineral as a contaminant. Our observations within the BO Tower's operations room and other accessible areas of the facility did not indicate that the vermiculite insulation within the attic was entering the work areas. During our investigation, we entered the attic and obtained 5 randomly collected material samples of the insulation from different locations within the attic. Under the heading of lead, while inspecting the operator's office, we observed flaking paint near the windows. We were informed that the paint did contain lead. Although prior air monitoring and wipe tests for lead did not determine a violation of the MIOSHA health standards, the presence of flaking lead-containing paint represents a future potential hazard that should be addressed. Under recommendations, although the vermiculite insulation did not contain regulated amounts of asbestos, for example, greater than 1%, we recommend steps be implemented to restrict access to the attic area to prevent potential disturbance activities. If entry becomes necessary where disturbance may occur, we recommend employees be trained, attired, and equipped to prevent potential exposures to asbestos. Although we did not observe any evidence of vermiculite insulation leaking through tongue and groove ceiling board joints, as a precautionary measure to prevent future potential leakage, the following control alternatives are offered for your consideration. Number 1, caulk the ceiling board's joint seams. Number 2, apply a drywall ceiling over the existing tongue and groove ceiling. Number 3, remove the vermiculite insulation with a high efficiency particulate air filtering HEPA vacuuming system and re-insulate the ceiling area with asbestos-free insulation. With regard to the flaking lead-containing paint, we recommend that it be removed and repainted with a lead-free paint by a specialized contractor whose employees are properly trained, attired, and equipped to comply with the requirements of MIOSHA's Part 603 Lead in Construction Standard, copy enclosed. Conclusion. On the date of our investigation, we did not determine any violations of the Michigan Occupational Health Standards for the condition study. The MIOSHA material sample data sheet from the second inspection contains 6 samples numbered 1 through 6. 3 of the vermiculite attic insulation samples resulted in less than 1% tremolite asbestos. 2 of the samples contained no detection of tremolite asbestos. The 6th sample was from the exterior siding of the building, resulting in 15% asbestos. It is important to mention that the MIOSHA inspectors, again, did not bang on the ceiling to see how easily the vermiculite fell through the ceiling. Absolutely. In November of 2005, 2 months prior to the second MIOSHA report, which claims that Libby vermiculite ore rarely exceeds 1% tremolite asbestos, the United States Department of Health and Human Services and the ATSDR issued this report on vermiculite ore shipments from Libby, Montana to Minnesota. According to the United States Environmental Protection Agency,
the average weighted percentage of tremolite asbestos in the ore from 1958 to 1971 was 4.34% tremolite asbestos. From 1972 to 1988, it was 3.52% tremolite asbestos. The vermiculite, which was less than 1% tremolite asbestos, or unknown, was 9.3% of the total shipped. And the vermiculite, which contained more than 1% tremolite asbestos, was 90.7% of the total vermiculite shipped into Minnesota. 16 days after the second MIOSHA report claimed that Libby vermiculite ore rarely contains more than 1% tremolite asbestos, on February 7th of 2005, the United States District Court for the District of Montana issued a criminal indictment against W.R. Grace and 7 W.R. Grace employees. In count number 1, conspiracy, item number 173, on or about November 23rd, 1999, defendants W.R. Grace and Stringer told the EPA on-scene coordinator that Libby mine vermiculite concentrate at the export plant and at the screening plant contained less than 1% tremolite asbestos. Count number 7, obstruction of justice. On or about November 23rd, 1999, in the District of Montana, defendants W.R. Grace and Alan R. Stringer did corruptly obstruct, impede, and endeavor to influence, obstruct and impede the due and proper administration of the law under which a pending proceeding was being had before the United States Environmental Protection Agency, an agency of the United States, by providing the following false and misleading information to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, to wit, that W.R. Grace's vermiculite concentrate contained less than 1% tremolite asbestos. On February 1st of 2005, I received yet another certified letter stating that I had been double extra secret duty dismissed in all capacities from Norfolk Southern Railroad. It took about 2 minutes to determine that the officially accurate Norfolk Southern transcript had again been fraudulently altered. My union representative, Charlie Litton, also confirmed that the transcript had been fraudulently altered. I sent this letter to Mr. Gary Shepard on February 1st, 2005. Dear Mr. Shepard, please find enclosed your letter dated January 17th, 2005, and all other materials received by me. Unfortunately, I am unable to accept these documents as presented to me, although these documents may or may not fulfill a legal obligation based on the Railway Labor Act. Past practice by Norfolk Southern dictates that I cannot accept the authenticity of the documents, and most specifically the audio transcript. The disturbing, unethical, and dishonest conduct of Norfolk Southern employees, which involves audio transcripts and documents from 2 prior disciplinary investigations, necessitates scrutiny of the conduct of Norfolk Southern for any other investigation or anything else. If Norfolk Southern is willing to supply an exact copy of the audio recording from the investigation and/or an audio transcription done by an unbiased third party, I would be happy to receive and review the proceedings of the investigation held on January 20th, 2005. I have adequately documented nefarious and unethical conduct during and after the prior investigation held on May 13th of 2004. It would be prudent for Norfolk Southern to deal with how that conduct violates your published rules and code of ethics. The conduct of employees of Norfolk Southern is disturbing to me and my family, without direct knowledge that Norfolk Southern is willing to follow established rules of conduct based on law and Norfolk Southern rules and code of ethics. I cannot accept documentation
which has been tampered with and altered. Although this conduct may benefit Norfolk Southern, it is intolerable to me because of the malicious intent. It is important that Norfolk Southern contact my attorney or union representative instead of contacting me in the future. I am willing to accept documents related to the January 20th investigation if normal and ordinary ethical conduct is observed. But all other written correspondence and other communications should be directed through my representatives. Of course, I expect that tax documents and other mass-mailed items will be sent to my address. If, and only if, Norfolk Southern satisfactorily resolves issues involving misconduct of its employees, which relate directly to my employment status, then, and only then, may Norfolk Southern assume any employee-employer relationship. Because of the iniquitous and unethical conduct of Norfolk Southern in the recent past, it is necessary for Norfolk Southern to substantiate its evidence and claims based on any investigation in which I am involved. As stated above, these documents are being returned to you because of prior unethical and nefarious conduct involving the same type of documentation. This issue can easily be resolved by behaving ethically and honestly, as the Norfolk Southern Code of Ethics clearly dictates. Earlier, on August 4th, 2004, with Enron-esque truthiness, the Director and Assistant Director of Labor Relations for Norfolk Southern had claimed, quote, numerous objections do not exist, unquote, and are, quote, irrelevant because none were ever made, unquote. Then, with villainous intentions, proclaimed that a signed statement from Walter Wilson about, quote, viewing exhibits, unquote, and electing, quote, not to make any objections, unquote, was something more than a complete work of fiction and fraud. These two spokesboys of defamation claimed that I was, quote, vociferous and out of line, unquote, when Charlie Litton had, quote, stated that he had no objections after reviewing the mysterious and non-existent exhibits. And finally, like whipped cream on a turd sundae, quote, an incomplete transcript, unquote, was, quote, most vehemently denied to exist by Norfolk Southern Railroad. On February 16th, 2005, Mr. R.G. Lockery and D.H. Mullen produced a new and improved litany of lies, fraud, dishonesty, deliberate deceptions, and unethical statements. Here are a few examples. And quoting, even testimony by carrier officers was missing from the transcript, which is completely false. In accordance with the collective bargaining agreement, the hearing record or transcript provided by the carrier is the complete record of the hearing, unquote. Nevertheless, and without prejudice to the carrier's position, the carrier once again carefully reviewed the original tape. Let's repeat that. Carefully reviewed the original tape of the hearing made by the carrier and found it to be a true and accurate record of the hearing when compared to the transcript of the hearing made by the carrier. Moreover, the hearing officer and witness for the carrier agree that the record of the hearing provided by the carrier is complete. However, once the claimant provided the carrier with a copy of his tape, the carrier had its internal auditor staff analyze it and compare it to the original tape and transcript done by the carrier. After this independent analysis was performed, it was determined that both the claimant's and the organization's allegations were without merit. Attached is email correspondence which attests to this fact. Without prejudice to the carrier's position,
This department also compared, despite the quality of said tape, the tape provided by the claimant to the transcript provided by the carrier, and agree with the report of the Internal Audit Department that any discrepancies found were minor and would have no bearing on the final decision made by the hearing officer. As such, the transcript provided by the carrier of the May 13, 2004 hearing is accurate, and the few sentences not picked up by the carrier's recording were insignificant and would not have altered the hearing officer's decision. After reviewing the transcript of the formal investigation and with due consideration of your position, our decision remains that claimant was granted a fair and impartial investigation.
In April of 2005, the employees at BO Tower were extremely concerned for their health and safety during Norfolk Southern's sealing of the cracks in the ceiling at BO Tower and the removal of the vast quantities of peeling lead-based paint and repainting of BO Tower. Those concerns were voiced to Norfolk Southern management and were totally disregarded. On April 19th of 2005, this letter was sent to MIOSHA. Dear Mr. Kalinowski, the fine folks at Norfolk Southern are chipping lead paint in the building known as BO Tower while the employees are present. When questioned about rules governing such lead abatement, the person decided to do the work when an employee would be working and would not question the activity. The MIOSHA report dated January 19, 2005 says, with regard to the flaking lead containing paint, we recommend that it be removed and repainted with the lead-free paint by a specialized contractor whose employees are properly trained, attired, and equipped to comply with the requirements of MIOSHA's Part 603 Lead and Construction Standard, copy enclosed. I trust that MIOSHA did not recommend that the peeling lead paint be disturbed by workers with no protection, and that Norfolk Southern employees be present and subject to the residual effects of such activities afterwards. It seems that the requirements of MIOSHA Part 603 Lead and Construction is meant to protect people in exactly this situation. As a result of the letter, BO Tower was inspected for a third time by John Walker of MIOSHA's Asbestos Division on April 20th of 2005. Norfolk Southern's employee, David Arnovitz, was not allowed by MIOSHA to be present at the third inspection of BO Tower. On July 26, 2005, the third MIOSHA report from the third MIOSHA inspection was sent to the Norfolk Southern contractor. No copies were sent to the TCU union as had been done twice before. The report did not mention Norfolk Southern or the fact that Norfolk Southern employees were present during and after the unsafe workplace activities. Here are a few highlights. Several material samples were obtained from the manual scrape paint that had settled on the floor and windowsills of the operating room and from within a standard shop vacuum used by your company and stored within the lower level of the BO Tower. We also obtained a white sample of dust from the top side of the microwave oven. These samples were subsequently submitted to the MIOSHA's laboratory for analysis. The results of our tests confirmed the presence of lead, for example, from 0.18% to 33% lead, and cadmium, for example, from 0.020% to 0.035% cadmium. As a result of our investigation, the following violations of the MIOSHA's Lead Exposure and Construction Standard Part 603 and Cadmium Standard Part 309 were determined. Number 1. The employer failed to determine if any employee may be exposed to lead at or above the action level. Number 2. The employer failed to determine if any employee may be exposed to cadmium at or above the action level. Number 3, employer failed to ensure that employees were provided with an interim protections specified by 29 CFR until an employee exposure assessment for lead was obtained. The aforementioned improper and/or lack of work practices are violations of Michigan's occupational health standards and constitute items 1A, 1B, and 2 of the enclosed citation 1. The MIOSHA material sample data sheet from the third inspection contained 8 samples numbered 1 through 8. Number 1, 14% lead, 0.03% cadmium. Number 2, 11% lead, 0.021 cadmium. Number 3, 17% lead, 0.029 cadmium. Number 4, 5.6% lead, 0.023% cadmium. Number 5, 33% lead, 0.020 cadmium. Number 6, 17% lead, 0.035 cadmium. Number 7, 13% lead, 0.033 cadmium. And number 8, 0.018% lead. It was after this third and final inspection of Norfolk Southern's BO Tower by MIOSHA that the interior walls and the exterior door of BO Tower were painted Dayglow green by Norfolk Southern Corporation. On August 26th of 2005, Mr. David L. Steele, General Chairman for the Transportation Communications International Union, sent me this letter by certified mail with the return receipt requested. Dear Brother Height, this is to inform you that your claim for restoration to service with seniority and all rights unimpaired and pay for all lost compensation commencing May 18th of 2004, continuing until your restoration to service. Now hold on a minute here. Wow, my award was for back pay, plus the added bonus of reinstatement to service at Norfolk Southern's BO Tower. For heaven's sake, I would be able to jump on in the pool and swim with Norfolk Southern dedicated to doing it the right way, ethically, honestly, with honesty and integrity, dedicated to maintaining the highest standards of ethics and accountability. Imagine my glee at the opportunity of again swimming in Norfolk Southern's pool of a history of integrity, a clean record of proud corporate accomplishments, the far prouder tradition and reputation for fair dealing, for trying hard to do the right things, to a culture based on honesty and high standards, with a tradition and a reputation for fair dealing. How could I possibly miss out on more of Mr. David R. Good's lessons in ethical leadership and Mr. Good's ingredients of codified ethics, the high ethical standards, Norfolk Southern's long-standing tradition of integrity, the most prized asset of a reputation for fairness and integrity with people inside and outside Norfolk Southern. In all instances, the intact and unquestioned integrity of Norfolk Southern. Of course, the safe, supportive, Dayglow green work environment at Norfolk Southern's BO Tower. That's a little bit like escaping from a Nazi concentration camp and getting a big award, a grand prize, being allowed to return for more of the same treatment. And how could I possibly miss out on the new Dayglow green decor? And continuing, it is scheduled to be heard by Public Law Board number 4851 with Charlotte H. Gold serving as chairman and neutral member at 9 a.m. Friday, September 9th, 2005
at a double extra secret duty location to be determined in St. Simons Island, Georgia, 1,041 miles from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Representatives of the union will be in attendance at the hearing for the purpose of presenting your case to the board. Therefore, it is not necessary for you to attend. However, if you desire to be present and be heard, you have the right to do so at your own expense. If you plan to attend the hearing, please notify this office as soon as possible, but no later than September 5th of 2005. We will apprise you of the location, the double extra secret duty location of the hearing at that time. When Public Law Board number 4851 renders its decision in your case, you will be advised. Sincerely and fraternally, David L. Steele, General Chairman. On September 9th of 2005, Mr. Dale H. Mullen provided this submission to the Public Law Board number 4851. Here are a few highlights. Quote, shortly before claimant was found guilty of making the videotape of B.O. Tower, the Norfolk Southern supervisor at Kalamazoo, Michigan, was contacted by Michigan Occupational Health, Safety and Health Administration in response to information they received from an unnamed source that B.O. Tower was an unhealthy workplace. This state agency and a private environmental firm both subsequently performed multiple tests on B.O. Tower and found that B.O. Tower was a safe place to work and in compliance with work environmental regulations, contrary to claimant's allegations. One notarized statement by the claimant attempted to cast doubt on the ability of the hearing officer to conduct a fair and impartial hearing. The other statement, again self-serving, claimed that the transcript of the hearing was incomplete and that even testimony by carrier officers was missing from the transcript, which was later found to be completely false. In accordance with the collective bargaining agreement, the hearing record or transcript provided by the carrier, Norfolk Southern, is the complete record of the hearing. Based upon the claimant's written allegations, the carrier, Norfolk Southern, once again carefully reviewed the original tape of the hearing made by the carrier and found it to be a true and accurate record of the hearing when compared to the transcript of the hearing made by the carrier. Moreover, the hearing officer and witness for the carrier agree that the record of the hearing provided by the carrier is complete. However, once the claimant provided the carrier with a copy of his tape, the carrier had its internal auditor staff and certified fraud examiners analyze it and compare it to the original tape and transcript done by the carrier. After this independent certified fraud examining analysis was performed, it was determined that both claimants and the organization's allegations were without merit. Exhibit B, page 29, which is the email from Larry Panino, certified fraud examiner. The report of the Internal Audit Department that any discrepancies that were found were minor and would have no bearing on the final decision made by the hearing officer. As such, the transcript provided by the carrier of the May 13, 2004 hearing is accurate, and the few words not picked up by the carrier's recording were insignificant and would not have altered the hearing officer's decision. Even if the organization could prove it never received a complete transcript and documents, precedent exists not to alter discipline for such a reason. Therefore, since the carrier, Norfolk Southern, did prove that the organization representative did receive a complete transcript, and since the allegation was then dropped by the organization, the Transportation Communications International Union, this allegation serves no purpose in the board's findings. The carrier had no choice but to dismiss the employee that knowingly and deliberately violated the rules by putting his personal interests before that of his employer. When he allowed an unauthorized person, his physician, to view the videotape of the BO Tower to support his personal view that it was an unhealthy place to work. No employer can tolerate an employee that deliberately ignores the rules of his employer and knowingly takes personal action without authorization to show illegally made videotapes of company property to convince others outside his workplace that his environment is unhealthy and unsafe. The axiom, obey now and grieve later, represents an essential principle in the smooth operations of the railroad industry. Claimant flagrantly violated this tenet when he did not follow rules and regulations. Dismissal is clearly justified in this case to quell the possibility of future insubordination and to safeguard the smooth functioning of railroad operations. To accept any other action would be served to grind railroad operations to a halt. If employees could disobey carrier rules with impunity, when he allowed his personal physician to view an illegally made videotape of company property. Furthermore, the claimant acted against the interests of the carrier and acted only for his own benefit. The claimant's actions were wrong and premeditated. Claimant did not approach his supervisor or any other carrier officer with his concerns about the working conditions of the BO Tower. The conclusion, dismissal is fully warranted and justified in this case. The facts have not been refuted. As such, claimant is guilty of providing an authorized person to a videotape of the BO Tower and carrier property without the permission from the carrier in direct violation of the carrier's safety and general conduct rule. Moreover, claimant by his own admission put his personal interest ahead of those of the carrier. In light of the above, the carrier respectfully requests his board deny the instant claimant in its entirety.
These members of the Norfolk Southern Board of Directors: Dr. Jane Margaret O'Brien, President, St. Mary's College of Maryland; Mr. Landon Hilliard, Brown Brothers Harriman; former Virginia Governor Gerald L. Belials, Hunton and Williams; retired Navy Admiral J. Paul Reason; Mr. Stephen F. Lear, CEO, Arch Coal Incorporated; Mr. Gene R. Carter of the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development; Mr. Alston D. Correll, CO for Georgia Pacific; Mr. Burton M. Joyce; Mr. Harold W. Pote, J.P. Morgan Chase; Mr. David R. Good, Chairman and CEO for Norfolk Southern Corporation; and Mr. Charles W. Mormon, President of Norfolk Southern Corporation. Were sent 3 letters on October 10th of 2005, October 18th, 2005, and November 7th, 2005. It is necessary to contact you regarding a matter concerning your role as a member of the Board of Directors for Norfolk Southern. Exactly the same material is being sent to the other members of the board. These documents have already been received by at least 2 parties at Norfolk Southern, including David Good. In September of 2005, at federal arbitration, Norfolk Southern used a fraudulent transcript of a disciplinary investigation and a defamatory affidavit from a Norfolk Southern official These documents were used with an absolute disregard for the integrity of the materials. I have vigorously protested the fraudulent and corrupt nature of these documents being used for any purpose, despite the fact that the investigation was recorded by Norfolk Southern and by me. Norfolk Southern officials were willing to commit fraud and perjury in federal arbitration. There is no excuse for this conduct in any segment of society. If you require more information, I would be willing to speak with you, provided that the conversation is confidential and not recorded in any way. I have sent documents and an audio CD to you by mail regarding Norfolk Southern. You may have many serious concerns upon reviewing the documents and audio CD, about 30 minutes. I would like to assure you that the building in question was repaired in the summer of 2005 to eliminate asbestos exposure to the employees. This repair was done after I made appropriate and bold actions to protect the lives of my former co-workers. The only actions taken by Norfolk Southern in this matter have been inappropriate and worse. The irresponsible and corrupt conduct of the employees of Norfolk Southern is frightening and disturbing. If my actions are to be considered less than honorable in any way, I wish to express my utter contempt for those making such a determination. In an era when young men and women are killed and maimed in war protecting our country, I accept my obligation to make my own sacrifices when the cause is right. This entire situation has been a wonderful education on integrity, honesty, and self-sacrifice. My regrets are very few, and the largest regret is having any association with Norfolk Southern whatsoever. And the third and final letter on November 7th of 2005. It is necessary to contact you and the members of the board of directors again regarding the conduct of employees of Norfolk Southern. Very little of what is included is material which was recently sent to you or the members of the board. There is no need to contact me regarding any of these issues. I am specifically requesting that no contact is made with me directly. The reason for this letter is threefold. The primary reason is that it is necessary for me to make a thorough attempt at communicating the salient points of this ugly situation. This is a purely personal desire to put this long nightmare behind me in every way possible. By moving forward, I can use this experience in a positive way as a guiding post to my future plans and belief system. A quotation from Carl Jung is particularly relevant. Quote, "The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed. It is just these intense conflicts and their conflagration which are needed to produce valuable and lasting results." Unquote. The second reason is my sincere hope that corrupt and criminal business practices can be avoided in the future when dealing with employees. Nothing would please me more to hear that Norfolk Southern will make sincere efforts to rededicate itself to the many high standards of ethics and integrity which are clearly spelled out in the Norfolk Southern Code of Ethics. Please understand that the distastefulness of the blatant corruption is multiplied because Norfolk Southern has been caught red-handed in criminal and corrupt activity. It has been disturbing to me and my family to be the victim of corruption and criminality. I would hope that such activities could be curtailed in the future. The final reason for this letter is particularly disturbing. There can be no greater evil than to force another person to do wrong because that person is a subordinate. This force can be overt or implied. It is particularly disturbing that your employees feel that being responsible, ethical, and maintaining personal integrity will result in a similar fate which has befallen me. This is most disturbing when your own auditors are prevented from acting with ethical responsibility, which should be their, misspelled, primary goal.
This situation started because each Norfolk Southern employee at BO Tower was ill with very similar symptoms. It was particularly disturbing when I realized that all of the other employees were suffering from the same symptoms that I was experiencing. One of the only ways to alleviate immediate respiratory symptoms was to wear a simple dust mask while working. My supervisor, David Arnovitz, witnessed me wearing a dust mask while working on at least 5 occasions. I explained the necessity of wearing these masks to Mr. Arnovitz repeatedly. After my OSHA was scheduled to inspect the building, Mr. Arnovitz explained that Norfolk Southern did not want sick employees and would do what it took to prevent sick employees. It was a relief to me and the other employees that the situation could be resolved. Unfortunately, this progressive and responsible attitude turned into the present ugly situation. No sane, rational person desires to harm others, and Mr. Arnovitz has simply followed orders regardless of his personal beliefs. I anticipated an ugly situation when I learned of the asbestos content of the insulation, the qualities of vermiculite, and witnessed how easily it passed through the cracks in the ceiling of the building. When I learned of the recent loss in the U.S. Supreme Court of a landmark asbestos lawsuit only a few months prior, it became painfully evident that Norfolk Southern would respond poorly. The criminal and corrupt behavior of Norfolk Southern in the following 18 months has far exceeded what I believe to be possible. In April of 2004, I was given 80 days suspension for videotaping the deplorable conditions of the workplace and was accused of providing the video to everybody and anybody, including my physician. My physician indicated in May of 2005 that I could not work in the building because of the conditions of the building and indicated that he had seen a videotape of the deplorable conditions. It was for this egregious offense which Norfolk Southern ultimately fired me. It is necessary to point out exactly why my physician viewed a videotape of your building. After a visit with Dr. Kelly, in which I explained the hazardous conditions of the building, Dr. Kelly was required under Michigan Public Health Code to report the suspected hazardous condition within 10 days to my OSHA. As a result of this report to my OSHA by my physician, I was contacted by my OSHA on May 31st, 2004 by Fred Kirkland. As a result of this inquiry by my OSHA, a copy of a laboratory report and a copy of a videotape were sent to my OSHA and my physician. As you can see from the attached letter dated April 7, 2004, the material was provided to my physician and an industrial hygienist for my OSHA in order to prevent injury to the employees still working in the building. Although it may in some bizarre fashion seem appropriate to retaliate against me for such actions, there was no doubt that I was taking conservative and appropriate action to prevent physical harm to fellow co-workers at BO Tower. This is an action which had very little or no personal interest for me. Do you believe that this was an offense which required any punishment whatsoever? The disciplinary investigation from May of 2004 was audio taped by me and by Norfolk Southern. The transcript of the investigation contained more than 277 missing relevant words. Irrelevant omissions not counted. There was text which was omitted, changed, and added. In spite of the fraudulent nature of the document, Norfolk Southern has continually represented the fraudulent transcript as authentic. Norfolk Southern used this fraudulent transcript in a public law board in September of 2005 with direct knowledge of its fraudulent content. A copy of the audio recording was supplied to you, that's Mr. Good, and Larry Panino of the internal audits in December of 2005. On January 5th, 2005, Mr. Panino and Mr. Wayne Lockwood then provided a fraudulent report on a review of the audio recording and the altered transcript. See attached email copy. How can any document with more than 277 missing words, added content,
and changed content be considered an authentic document. The hearing officer from the investigation, Walter L. Wilson, also provided a perjurious and defamatory affidavit regarding testimony from the investigation. A copy of this document is attached. This document is a handwritten statement which is signed, dated, and contains a time and date stamp from a fax transmission. It is obvious that this false statement was solicited from Mr. Wilson because of the ridiculous and self-serving content. Even Mr. Panino acknowledges that this document was completely false because his email details the actual testimony from the investigation. It is disturbing that internal auditors Wayne Lockwood and Lawrence Panino were prevented from doing a realistic assessment of the criminal and corrupt behavior of Norfolk Southern employees. This is particularly disturbing because of the supposed role that such a position holds. Both of these men are officers in a local chapter of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. See attached document. Can you tell me how these men can train others in anything involving fraud, corruption, or criminality? The duplicity of the enclosed email statement of Lawrence Panino is shocking and disturbing. In January of 2005, I was again fired for a voicemail containing profanity, which was left for Mr. Panino. See attached copy contains profanity. It seems that very similar words of profanity are appropriate for David Arnovitz in the recording of the investigation from May of 2004. You each already have a copy. This is another prime example of self-serving duplicity. It is actually amusing when I tell people about being double duty fired. For some reason, many people bring up the scene from the movie Animal House when the fraternity is placed on double secret probation. See enclosed page of quotations. This is usually good for a hearty laugh. You should ask yourself why such a phone call was made. Please understand that involving employees in criminal and corrupt activities does not promote a safe and healthy workplace. These activities have short-term benefits to your organization, and in the long term, there are devastating results. I can tell you that I have no desire to be associated with a business which forces its employees to condone criminal and corrupt behavior. If Norfolk Southern is to blame me for some imagined qualities which create the illusion of righteousness, I hope that this material will shatter such a purulent assessment. Can this situation become a turning point for Norfolk Southern? Can Norfolk Southern become something better because of this ugly situation? Can Norfolk Southern cease its practice of forcing employees to be involved in criminal activities and corruption? Can Norfolk Southern have a truly independent audit department and staff? For the sake of the employees and shareholders of Norfolk Southern, I sincerely hope that true efforts to change this behavior can be made. Ethics and integrity does not begin with doing that which you believe you can get away with. On November 9th of 2005, I received a letter sent by an attorney representing Norfolk Southern, Mr. James S. Whitehead, from Chicago, Illinois. Dear Mr. Thompson, please be advised that your client, Scott Height, has recently written members of the board of directors of our client, Norfolk Southern Corporation. In such letters, Mr. Height alleges that Norfolk and Southern has used a fraudulent transcript of the May 13, 2004 formal investigation of the charges against him under safety and general conduct rule R, and a defamatory affidavit from District Superintendent W.O. Wilson in defending the discipline assessed against Mr. Height, his May 18, 2004 termination at an arbitration hearing. Because these allegations essentially repeat charges that Mr. Height previously made in the fall of 2004, charges
that were investigated by the company's the internal audit department and found to be without the factual basis. And neither the Mr. Heights letters nor the enclosures he has provided they offer in the new facts bearing on the allegations. The company has concluded that no further action is appropriate at this time. Because the Mr. Heights counsel in the ongoing litigation relating to the mate's termination. I wanted to make you aware of this correspondence and the company determination. The company determination of which I would request the inform the Mr. Heights. Sincerely, James S. Whitehood, C.C., Norfolk Southern Board of Directors. February 13th of 2006, at a public law board held in St. Simons Island, Georgia, the decision was unanimous. The public law board, the number 4851, the PLV, the MMB, case number 112. The statement of the claim. If the claimant had the question about the environmental conditions in the workplace at work, there was the appropriate avenues open to them to express these concerns. Including notifying a members of the management of the Norfolk Southern of the filing a formal complaint. Unfortunately, they failed to do so. The claimant, the Scott Height, the claimant was afforded a full and the fair hearing and was granted the all procedural rights due to him by the agreement. The carrier, the Norfolk Southern Railway, adduced the sufficient evidence at the investigation to sustain its charge. The discipline assessed it was appropriate. The award, the claim denied. The Charlotte H. Gold, the arbitrator, the Charlotte H. Gold, the neutral chairman, the James L. Clutie, from the Omaha, Nebraska, from the 1,500 miles from the Georgia. The James L. Clutie from the TCU Union. The Dal H. Mullen from the Norfolk Southern. The Norfolk Southern. Labor Relations. On the February 13 of the 06, the date of the approval. The award is denied. On January 23rd of 2007, the interior walls of Norfolk Southern's Video Tower are still painted Dayglow green. And heck, I got an idea. I wrote this letter to Mr. Donald Jones, Executive Director for the Kalamazoo Valley Habitat for Humanity. Dear Mr. Jones, please find enclosed one DVD video documentary titled Behind the Dayglow Green Door and a map to the location of Norfolk Southern's Video Tower. According to the Yahoo map, the building is 0.2 of a mile from your office. I am requesting that you place this building on your list of projects to be done for the sake of humanity. Norfolk Southern did manage to seal up the ceiling of the building so that the employees no longer had to breathe tremolite asbestos. The lead-based paint hazard was dealt with by painting the interior walls of the building Dayglow green. My opinion is that this choice of color is much less than humane and more appropriate to a Soviet-era gulag or a Western Michigan University undergraduate psychology experiment. Unfortunately, many of the uncomfortable and undesirable environmental conditions in the building still exist and cause health problems and concerns for the employees still working in the building. Norfolk Southern has utilized its resources in double extra duty dismissed main all capacities from Norfolk Southern Railroad for lawyers, lawsuits, environmental consultants, and may need to triple extra duty terminate me, or worse. I was wondering if your organization might be able to take the time and effort to assist the employees working in the Norfolk Southern's building, known as BO Tower, by repainting and rehabbing the building. You might want to have the filth and dust still present in the building tested for lead, cadmium, tremolite asbestos, mold, and other toxins before beginning any renovation. It would be best for you to contact Norfolk Southern directly. Thank you for your time.
It has been almost 3 years since my last day working at Norfolk Southern's BO Tower, and I have only one regret. By spending one more day working for Norfolk Southern, and by spending less than $20 of my own money and using tools like these, I could have easily sealed up the cracks in the ceiling at BO Tower in only a few hours. Maybe such common sense activity would have given Norfolk Southern a reason to fire me before the whole physician seeing a videotape of the workplace thing got cooked up. The only reason my doctor saw the stupid video was to keep Norfolk Southern from harming and or killing its employees. The funny thing is that the fraud and corruption of Norfolk Southern that ultimately got the ceiling and the walls of BO Tower fixed, if Norfolk Southern had simply produced an accurate transcript from their first formal investigation, there would have been no reason to bring this tape recorder to the second one. And then there would have been no evidence that my OSHA had not taken its own sample of the vermiculite attic insulation. And yo, Adrian, I did it. I stopped you weasels, and I screwed up your master plan. But you just couldn't stop with the fraud and corruption. You just could not stop yourselves. I really hope you're proud of yourselves, because I certainly am proud of myself. This was my second unfortunate and disgusting experience with being a whistleblower, with corporate corruption, corporate fraud, and white-collar crime. That was the primary reason that my employment opportunities were less than optimal, and the reason that I was working at BO Tower. I paid my dues the first time and deeply resent again revisiting the sewers of corporate ethics. There are a few goals which I would like to accomplish after everything which has occurred. I would like to take this opportunity to reach out for a helping hand. I had reconstructive surgery done on my right leg in 2002, which resulted in my right foot now angling upwards about 30 or 40 degrees. It causes serious pain in my right leg and both hips. Without having health insurance, I face a painful and uncertain future. I would really appreciate any help that I can get. I really, really would.